Hey, do you remember that in a recent episode of my Genesis 315 channel, I said that those who are insisting that the consecration of March the 25th, 2022 fulfilled the commands of Our Lady of Fatima have since that date simultaneously failed to admit that they were wrong about the many acts of consecration or entrustment made by John Paul II. In fact, they don't even mention him at all, and I find that quite curious, while they are insisting that not only has the last consecration by Francis been the complete and proper one, but that those who don't believe it are somehow failing as Catholics. Do you also remember that I mentioned that we hear often enough that Fatima is a mere private revelation, which we're not obligated to believe? Yes, we're told that despite the fact that an apparition or a locution cannot be approved as worthy of belief by the bishop of a diocese in which the event or events took place, unless what is said or otherwise demonstrated is in perfect accord with divine revelation, which in turn has been entrusted to the Church. Now, we're told all of that despite the fact that the Virgin Mary, as the Church herself holds, is the Virgin most powerful, the Queen of Prophets, the Queen of the Holy Rosary, the Queen of Peace, the Queen of the Church, Mother of the Church, and more. We're told that despite the fact, as I also said in a previous episode, that our Lord promised us that he would be with us until the consummation of the world. So in my newest episode, I will share something said by Pope John Paul II in regard to both the Virgin's mandate made at Fatima to the Holy Father, formally requested on June 13th, 1929, and what he also said about the world's bishops. So what I'm going to share with you today is also telling and may demonstrate that the popes before and after John Paul II also did not rightly understand the office of the papacy and its rightful authority. Its limitations, of course, but it's also its breadth and its depth. Meanwhile, I'd like to hear from you too, because, I am considering working on the layout and the publishing of my complete Fatima chronology, which I told you is the most in-depth one to date, written by any Fatima author. And so I also would like to move on to other topics. So one part of me is, I'm debating. Do I complete it here? And the other part is going, you know what? You could always look at episode 46, which is a podcast, and listen to it. You won't see me, but you'll hear my voice. Because I provided a very generous overview of the historical highlights regarding that which was asked by God through Our Lady, regarding this collegial consecration of Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. So please be sure to write a comment about the Fatima message too, about what you'd like to learn in regard to it. And to repeat, I'm focusing on the Fatima message. I could talk about the apparitions themselves, which I've already done. For example, what do the stars represent? What could be the meaning of the miracle of the sun? Why was a cloud on top of the holm oak tree upon which Our Lady stood? In fact, why did she stand even on a holm oak tree? And so on. Now, most of those things are in my book, Fatima, the Signs and Secrets. I have said them, talked about them here on Genesis 315. I started to talk about them on the Fatima Center website, which I will be returning to. They have the videos, on their website. They also have them on YouTube and other places. But if you wanted me to talk about any of those things, or, specifically the most important part, the message, what is the center part of the message? It's devotion to the Immaculate Heart of Mary and all that encapsulates. So I'm asking you to just ask me about the message, not about other topics that are controversial, in the sense that they're really not going to help us. For example, I don't think that discussing and researching into the fake Lucia, at least for myself, I can only speak for myself, okay? That researching whether or not and where it happened to the real Lucia, if there was a fake Lucia, I do not see that is a good use of my time. Our Lady was very clear about the Fatima message. We did receive enough from Sister Lucia, more than enough to know what it is and to hopefully understand it. And if we don't, we can talk to those who do. So again, ask me if you have any questions. Please go ahead and do that in regard to the Fatima apparitions themselves, the Fatima message. Likewise, before I go on any further, but I'll say it real quick. Please subscribe, like, and share this or any other Genesis 315 episode so that you will help us, because it's free to do it, and you're going to help us helping others, okay? Now, we already know what the Virgin asked about, so we will begin with August 6, 1978, the death of Pope Paul VI. He was followed by John Paul I, who didn't, live very long after he was made Pope. And accepted the role, and his successor was John Paul II, elected October the 6th, 1978. Now, in the year 1980, many things happened, so I'm only going to focus on a few events in regard to approaches by other prelates to the Pope at that time regarding Our Lady's request. Cardinal Joseph Slipyj of the Ukraine submitted to Rome the public petitions with over 2 million signatures for the collegial consecration of Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Then also Bishop Pavel Hanilka of Czechoslovakia told Pope John Paul II that, in the presence, by the way, of Cardinal Wyszynski, who was a good friend of the Pope's, that, quote, the most important thing he had to do during his pontificate was the consecration of Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary in union with all of the bishops, unquote. Now, the Pope responded that, quote, such a consecration would be considered by the Russians to be a meddling into their internal affairs, and that would have political consequences, unquote. So there's a big hint right there about what is called the sin of human respect. Sorry to say it, but it has to be said. We mentioned it before because people are always asking me, why didn't any of the popes listen? And I keep telling you, I can't tell you what their motivations are, but I can tell you what happened in this regard. And even with, I'm sorry to say, Pope Pius XII, and probably some others too, if we ever went into all of that, but it comes down to they're afraid that they're going to insult Russia. Okay. John Paul also protested that, quote, the jurisdiction of the Pope only comprises the Catholic Church, and that the Pope is not the Pope of all men, unquote. Surprising, right? Cardinal Wyszynski interjected at that point, and remember, he was a friend of John Paul II, and he answered the Pope saying, quote, Christ being the King of the world, his vicar has jurisdiction over all men, unquote. The Pope then appealed to precedent, stating that his, quote, predecessors had not thought it good to make that consecration with all the bishops of the world, unquote. So now he's saying they didn't do it, so I don't have to do it. That's a concern. But this could also shed some light on why other popes after him also didn't do it. So turning back to Bishop Hanilka, John Paul II then made a truth and just statement, so to speak, saying, quote, go, win over for me all the bishops of the world into this idea of this consecration, and I'll do it for them, unquote. Now, it wasn't a matter of doing it for them. It was a matter of commanding them to join him because he himself was obeying Our Lady. But those words may explain much, despite so many acts of world consecrations and entrustment made by John Paul II, who, sad to say, never did make the explicit collegial consecration of Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, which Our Lady of Fatima asked for, and which our Lord himself backed up, so to speak, by also speaking to Lucia and expressing his disappointment and what would happen because the popes were not, and his counselors were not listening. Okay. In fact, I'd have to say the recently deceased Benedict XVI, God rest his soul, never made any attempt at the consecration at all, even though he did tell us things like the third sacred is spoken, which I had discovered by studying the Italian language article so many years ago. And I immediately wrote about it for the paper to which I regularly contribute. And that information is included in my book, Fatima, The Science and Secrets, which, by the way, is available on Amazon, as I always say, and to which links, as well as Guadalupe, I always include in the description box. So if you're interested, please look there. Now, we know that Francis made 2 different acts in 9 years. But again, my Fatima chronology, even the highlighting of it in episode 46, proves that his acts also did not meet heaven's requirements. All of the consecrations ever made are in some way incomplete, imperfect, faulty, whatever words you want to use to describe it. And so again, I'll refer you listeners to episode 46 of the Genesis 315 channel. In the meantime, I am debating a few things, including one, I would like to ask you, do you prefer shorter video times on Genesis 315, or do you like full length, 30-minute or more, maybe 20 or 30-minute or more episodes? Do you prefer videos versus podcasts? Sometimes life just happens that I can't, necessarily get on screen, which is why I started on podcasting anyway. But I'd like to know what you think. So do you let me know, if you like longer videos, if you are fine with any length, if 10 minutes is more your style. Do you listen to them at home? Do you listen to when you're driving? See, everyone has different needs and preferences, okay? I'm not going to be able to fill them all, but I do want to hear what you have to say so I can make some decisions too. And again, I'm debating whether I'm going to stop with the Fatima complete chronology and instead work on laying out a book with that complete chronology and all the footnotes, because some people are interested, and maybe more people will be interested in it as time goes by. We only have 6 more years until the year 2029, which I have explained both in my book and in previous episodes why I think that is the Fatima deadline date for the collegial consecration of Russia, which, by the way, includes a papal act of reparation and the papal promulgation of the 5 First Saturdays devotion. That's another reason why no papal act made in any kind of form of concentration or entrustment fit the bill. And before I go, again, please don't forget to let me know what you would like to know about the Fatima message that you might not already know about. And again, subscribe, like, and share. And so until the next time, my friends, may God bless you, and may Our Lady Mary keep you and yours under her starry mantle. Salve Regina.